Hello everyone. We're going to finish up our drum sound design series by making a snare drum sound. So if any of you have seen a snare drum in person, you've seen that there's a top head and a bottom head. The top head makes your typical kind of drum sound. The pitch is a little higher when you hit the drum, so you press in the head, the pitch is raised, and then the drum head kind of relaxes, so you get that kind of drum sound. You also get the bottom head sound, and on the snare drum, the bottom head is a set of metal wires called snares, and they actually buzz and vibrate against the bottom head. So we're gonna need to create two sounds to create the snare drum sound for this example. So let's get started. One thing I want to point out that I haven't mentioned before is actually WebSynth has its own built-in recorder, which is very helpful. Also less complicated than using Chrome extensions too. It's really straightforward. The only thing you need to do is create an account. So you can just click join for free. They're not going to ask for a bunch of personal information. It's really pretty straightforward, just first name, last name, email address. Once you're logged in, you'll be able to use the recorder. And it's really important that you log in first before you design your sound. Because if you design your sound and then you try to log in, it's gonna refresh the page and delete your patch. So if you wanna use the WebSynth's built-in recorder, which I would really recommend, make a free account, log in first, and then you can go through and set your sound. This will also let you actually save sounds, save patches, and also load patches. So you can see I actually have some patches saved here, so that's another way to keep track of stuff. I can just click one, open it up, and now I've got one of my 808 bass samples that I made at some other point. So let's get started with the snare drum. So I'm going to set my blank canvas preset. We're going to go to oscillator 1 and set that to a noise wave. White noise specifically. So that's going to help create the bottom head sound of those metal snares vibrating against the bottom head. So sounds like noise. We're going to set our amplitude envelope next with the release, and we're going to set the sustain off because we want the sound to go to silent while we're pressing the key. It's a drum sound. Generally drum sounds are shorter, percussive, right? So we're going to set the seconds also to that same parameter, either between 0.02 and 0.2. That's worked out pretty well for making percussive drum sounds. So let's try it at 0.2 just to see what it sounds like on the longer end. Cool. So I would say for more of like a rock, even like an 80s kind of snare drum, that kind of length would be perfect. If you want to get more of like a trap style snare, you're going to want to make that shorter, maybe around 0.09. That has a little bit more of like a trap style snare sound. So next we're going to open up oscillator 2 and create the top head sound. We're going to set our shape to a sine wave, and we're going to set our frequency modifier with the shift octave at -2. That's very similar to the kick sound. It's just a little bit higher. So let's hear what we've got so far. So we're hearing both that the noise wave and that low sine wave sound that we're going to turn into our top head. Going to click the envelope next. After the frequency modifier, we do that envelope to create the boo kind of sound. So, when you hit a drum, the head is pressed in very quickly and then it releases. And what that amounts to is the pitch of the drum starts out higher and then relaxes to a lower pitch in just, a fraction of a second. So we're going to click envelope. When you open up the envelope for oscillator 2 frequency modifier, it is actually going to open up the release also. So just double check with some of these. Just scroll down and make sure there isn't anything open that you don't want. So we're going to remove the release. We've got our attack here. So we're going to set the initial shift between 50 and 300%. So what you'll notice is actually there's no attack happening right now. It's just staying at the same pitch because the attack seconds is longer than the release. So that means the since the sound itself is only 0.09 seconds long, it doesn't have a full second to make a attack pitch change, right? So we're gonna set the seconds to an amount that's shorter than our release. So I'm gonna try like 0.06. So now we're starting to hear that boom kind of sound. All right, sounding pretty good so far. Biggest issue right now is that there's just too much low end. Generally, you want to be able to have both your kick and your snare sit in different frequency spectrums in the mix. Right now, it's a little blended, so we're going to use a filter to filter out some of those low frequencies. So click Filters, click Filter 1, and you're going to set the type to High Pass. So we're going to let all those high frequencies go through and shave off the low frequencies. Before we set the cutoff, I do want to point out that the emphasis should be at 0. The emphasis can tend to add more of like a metallic quality, and since this is a drum sound, not a cymbal sound, we don't really want that. Sometimes emphasis can be good for even creating like a clave sound, something that has that kind of hollow resonance to it. It's not going to be the case for snare drum. So we really don't want the emphasis on the snare drum sound. So I'm going to set my cutoff now. I actually really like that, kind of at the top end of things. You don't want your snare drum to be too high, so it kind of mixes with the hi-hat. If you turn this all the way up, it's going to sound more like a hi-hat sound than a snare. If it's too low, a little bit too much like a bass drum, you can hear that, almost sounds like our snare drum sound. So yeah, getting that kind of mid-range frequency is going to get us the sound that we're looking for. So at this point, I've created my sound. Again, make sure that yours is just a little bit different from mine. You're going to get the most out of it that way. You can see that I'm already signed in because it has my username here. And then I'm just going to press record. Press the key I want to use for my snare drum. Press record again, and you can download it as a WAV file. What I would suggest doing after you download your sound is look at it in your downloads folder and rename it. So I'm gonna call it Snare Drum Mr. Mar, so that way I can find it later. All right, so after this, we're going to be learning how to import these sounds into a program called Twisted Wave, which is an online audio editor, which is also free. We're going to use that to crop our samples into usable one-shots. We're going to import those into Soundtrap and then add processing and then export them as new samples. And then you'll have fairly professional sounding drum sounds to use for some upcoming projects. So I think that's all we got. See you all next time.